Hi, I'm Emily, and I want to tell you a little bit about why menstrual health matters to me. I became a menstrual health advocate in 2017. Prior to this, I, like many others, was ashamed and embarrassed to talk about my periods or my menstrual health. In recent years, people have begun to talk more about period poverty and period equality. But what does period poverty and period equality mean to me? I think the first thing that comes to people's mind when we talk about period poverty and period equality is the financial aspect. And whilst I believe that everybody should have fair and equal access to menstrual hygiene products, for me, period poverty and period equality is so much more than just the financial aspects. It also encompasses the intellectual aspects. After years of struggling with things such as anxiety, depression, deliberate self-harm, and eating disorders, in 2016, I was diagnosed with a condition called premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Now, what is that, I hear you ask? Because that was the question I asked myself too when I received the diagnosis. Between 50 and 80% of menstruating individuals will suffer from premenstrual symptoms. And for around 20 to 25%, those symptoms will be classed as severe. However, for 3 to 8%, so we average it out at about 5% of the population of menstruating individuals, those symptoms will be so severe that they affect their everyday function in life. It is this cohort of individuals who are classed as having premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So some of the symptoms that people might talk about experiencing if they have PMDD are things like increased anxiety, low mood, feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, brain fog, bloating, joint pain, muscle aches, sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, feeling overwhelmed, a lack of energy, feeling out of control, being easily irritable, a loss of a sense of enjoyment in activities, becoming angry more easily, and individuals may even become suicidal. In 2017, there was a huge breakthrough for those suffering from PMDD. For the first time, researchers were able to say that although the cause of PMDD was unknown, they thought that it was caused by an altered response to sex hormones. So in other words, PMDD is an abnormal response at a cellular level to the normal hormone fluctuations which occur across the menstrual cycle. So why does menstrual health education and intellectual menstrual health, poverty and equality matter to me? Although you may have never heard of PMDD, it actually affects approximately 1 in 20 menstruating individuals. So what separates PMDD from any other psychiatric disorder such as depression, panic disorder, bipolar, and personality disorders? For a diagnosis of PMDD, the individual's symptoms need to have an increased mark severity or only be present in the luteal window. So that's the week or 2 before your period. Another defining feature is that the symptoms will pretty much dissipate and be absent during the follicular phase, which is the part of the menstrual cycle from when you have your period to when you ovulate again. Therefore, this means that in order to make an accurate diagnosis, individuals need to prospectively track their menstrual cycle against their emotional and physical symptoms, and only after a minimum of 2 months will a clinician be able to make a diagnosis. Once a diagnosis of PMDD has been made, there are a number of treatment options available to them. When I was age 11, I began struggling with my mental health. I started to develop anxiety and low mood, and over the years this progressed, and eventually I ended up under a community mental health team, and I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, deliberate self-harm, and an eating disorder. And despite wanting to get better and trying many different talking therapies and medications, my life often felt like it was spiralling out of control. However, in 2016, at age 26, I was diagnosed with a condition called premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Up until this point, I, like many, had never heard of this condition. Understandably, I was sceptical. However, finally having the correct diagnosis meant that I could access the right treatment, and this honestly changed my life. I went from being an individual who wasn't able to work and was barely able to look after myself, regularly self-harming, engaging in eating disordered behaviours, and taking overdoses as a maladaptive way of coping with my anxiety and feelings of being out of control, to a capable and optimistic individual who was now thriving. For the first time in 17 years, I was finally happy. Menstrual health education and awareness is important to me because I believe that it saved my life. I think it's really important that we continue to encourage conversations about menstrual health. During my own education, I was given very basic scientific information about the menstrual cycle. I was told to expect a period, but nobody told me about the factors that went alongside the period. Nobody talked about the emotional side, and nobody talked about what was normal. Feeling too ashamed and embarrassed to talk to my friends about it, I assumed that what I was going through was normal. Although much of the time I couldn't understand why I seemed to be struggling so much when everybody else seemed to be getting on okay with their lives. Because we didn't talk about it, I didn't know that they were not going through similar. Because my own menstrual health education was very limited, nobody taught me to be aware of my menstrual cycle and the fact that there could be both physical and psychological symptoms that, had I had this advice and been aware of the potential symptoms at an earlier age, maybe I could have started my menstrual tracking and got an accurate diagnosis sooner. I think for me growing up, I felt a lot of shame and stigma about talking about my menstrual health. I, like many people, saw periods as something like dirty because of the intimate area that they came from, and I was embarrassed to talk about them. And although it is improving, mental health is also something that many people are embarrassed to talk about. So when you put the two together, the menstrual health and the mental health, it's no wonder that people don't talk about it. However, how can individuals know that what they're going through is not normal if they don't talk about it? We only know our own normal, and if these symptoms have been occurring since the onset of puberty, how are individuals to know that there are treatment options which may enable them to live a better quality and more fulfilled life? Sadly, recent research has shown that PMDD has a 30% suicide attempt rate. However, it is thought that up to 90% of individuals with PMDD continue to suffer undiagnosed. I honestly believe with the right menstrual health education, we can raise awareness of these debilitating illnesses, and with increased awareness, earlier diagnosis will be made. And the correct diagnosis will hopefully mean the individual receives the correct treatment, which will not only change lives, it will save lives. Thank you.